The sun scarcely dipped beneath the horizon, painting the sky in hues of peach and lavender. A gentle breeze meandered through the neighborhood, rustling leaves with whispers of tranquility. It was a serene evening, the kind that cradled the mind in a lullaby of suburban peace. Yet beneath this veneer of calm lay an undercurrent of tension, a silent war waging on manicured lawns and between polished fences. I sipped my tea, watching the steam spiral upwards like an offering to the evening. Across the street, Karen stood like a sentinel, her presence a fixture in our small community. She was the self-appointed guardian of neighborhood order, her need for control as persistent as the tides. Karen was a storm, wrapped in a sundress, her gaze sharp and calculating. The first note arrived on a Tuesday, a crisp, white envelope slipped under my door. Inside, her immaculate script spelled out my alleged infractions, a hedge that dared to inch beyond its sanctioned border. A car parked too close to an invisible line, petty grievances dressed in polite language, each one a brushstroke in her masterpiece of control. I chose to respond with quietude, trimming the hedge and adjusting the car's position. It was a dance we performed, her leading with petty grievances, I following with passive resolutions. Her satisfaction was short-lived, her need for power insatiable. It was as if she drew energy from these small victories, her eyes gleaming with the thrill of minor triumphs. Yet, beneath my exterior of compliance simmered a quiet resolve. My soul ached for the peace her presence disrupted, a harmony I desired to reclaim. So I watched and waited, allowing her tapestry of control to unravel at its own pace. My patience was a stone fortress, impenetrable, yet unyielding. The hot tub was my sanctuary, a place where the day's burdens melted away. The tranquil water mirrored the sky above, capturing the essence of serenity. But Karen's transgressions were creeping closer, her shadow looming over my retreat. I sensed her intentions, her whispers reaching my ears like a breeze, carrying secrets. One evening, I noticed the signs, the gate ever so slightly ajar, footprints marking the path to my cherished refuge. She had crossed a line, her audacity unfurling like a flag in the wind. Karen had led her cadre of accomplices into my oasis, their laughter a discordant note in the symphony of night. I observed from a distance, my heart a rhythm of calm determination. They reveled in their perceived victory, unaware of the surprise lying beneath the surface. The die was a subtle touch, a harmless reminder of boundaries crossed. It would wash away, leaving only the imprint of a lesson learned. As they emerged, their skins stained in violets and blues, I allowed myself a smile. It was not revenge I sought, but understanding, a realization that harmony required respect, a boundary drawn not with hostility, but with quiet strength. The evening air cooled, wrapping around me with gentle reassurance. The landscape returned to its peaceful state, the sky darkening to deep indigo, and as the stars began their nightly vigil, I turned away from the window, the soft echoes of laughter fading into the night. The morning sun creeps through the blinds, casting long shadows across the room. As I sip my coffee, the events of last night replay in my mind like a surreal dream. The look on Karen's face when she emerged from the hot tub, a deep, indelible shade of purple that could rival the most defiant plum, was a sight to behold, a work of art, in a way, where consequences splash onto a canvas of entitlement. Yet, I know Karen. This was merely the opening salvo in a battle she relishes. Her retaliation would be as inevitable as twilight. The community bulletin board, our neighborhood's digital grapevine, buzzes with activity. The headline reads, "Mysterious Die Attack, HOA to Investigate." I chuckle, imagining the frantic typing and Karen's surely emphatic exclamation points. The stage is set for Act 2. True to form, Karen leaps at the opportunity. By noon, the neighborhood is blanketed with her peculiar brand of justice hand-delivered notes tucked into mailboxes, each one an officious diatribe warning of imminent rule enforcement. Her weapon of choice, The HOA handbook is wielded with the precision of a seasoned fencer. Absurd edicts follow, each more trivial than the last. Lawn ornaments must be confined to 3 per yard. Trash bins must align perfectly with the curb. The color of one's front door is suddenly scrutinized with a zeal normally reserved for presidential debates. As I wander through the neighborhood, a surreal landscape unfurls before me. Neighbors exchange wary glances, their expressions a tapestry of disbelief and amusement. The air is tinged with a peculiar combination of lilac and intrigue. Gossip simmers, rising like steam from freshly brewed tea, enveloping the community in its relentless embrace. Karen's name is whispered, not as a person, but as an event, a force of nature with a predictably unpredictable orbit. The irony is not lost on me. Karen, who decries order at every turn, now seeks refuge in its rigidity, a paradox wrapped in a pastel cardigan. Evening descends, and with it, a sense of calm. The shadows lengthen, knitting the edges of the world with quiet inevitability. I find solace in the garden, where the rhythmic hum of crickets provides a soundtrack to my musings. The stars, indifferent and eternal, twinkle with knowing abandon. Yet, amidst the chaos, a revelation unfolds. Power, true power, is not in the heavy hand of enforcement, but in the quiet resilience of those who stand unfazed. I smile, a quiet whisper of defiance in the dark. Karen, for all her bluster, is but a ripple in an ocean of calm. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new proclamations, and perhaps another chapter in this unfolding saga. But tonight, I savor the tranquility. The die may have been temporary, but its mark, the laughter, the absurdity, the sense of community, is indelible. The hot tub bubbles quietly in the corner, a silent witness to the drama that unfolded. I wonder if it, too, feels a sense of satisfaction. As I turn to head inside, a thought lingers sometimes. The most profound victories are those won in silence, with no witnesses, save for the stars above. The night air was crisp, a silent observer as I watched the purple tide unfurl in the stark glow cast from the porch light. It was no longer just water. It was a canvas, a swirling masterpiece of consequence and intention. Karen and her entourage, unaware of the transformation their revelry had undergone, were immersed in a world of their own making. The laughter echoed, sharp yet hollow, a discordant melody that matched neither the time nor the place. From my vantage point, obscured behind the carefully pruned hedges, I recorded everything with a steady hand. The camera lens, an unblinking eye, was both a witness and a judge. It captured each splash, every telltale ripple as the dye embraced their skin, a vibrant testament to their intrusion. I felt a quiet kind of satisfaction, the sort that curls around the edges of your mind when patience pays off in unexpected hues. Patience, a virtue, they'd always said, though not one Karen seemed to practice. She, with her omnipresent clipboard and clipboard minions, always hovering, always watching, her whispered admonitions and disapproving glances were as predictable as the tide. The hot tub was her latest conquest, an unsanctioned playground for her sycophants. They never suspected the trap I'd laid. It was subtle, a twist in the tale, as they would soon discover. I had my reasons. The dye was harmless, albeit stubborn. It wouldn't stain permanently, just enough to mark the occasion, a reminder of boundaries crossed and consequences met. I wondered how long it would take them to notice. Their frivolous chatter interrupted by the creeping realization that their skin was now an artist's palette of unintended hues. The night wore on. The moments stretched like shadows, elongated and silent. A whisper of wind carried their voices, now tinged with confusion. A rising tide of questions. I could almost see the gears turning in Karen's mind, hesitation giving way to the dawning comprehension of her predicament. It was a revelation painted in shades of theatrical irony. I imagined the scene in vivid detail. Karen, now the reluctant muse, surrounded by her equally stunned compatriots, their collective bewilderment a tableau vivant, caught between disbelief and the creeping chill of reality. The vibrant purple was not just a stain on their skin, but a mark of a moment they would not soon forget. One of them finally noticed. A strangled exclamation cut through the night, the sound a punctuation mark in the symphony of silence. Heads turned, eyes widened, mouths opened in a chorus of disbelief. The tableau dissolved into movement, frantic attempts to scrub away the dye, each effort only serving to deepen the hue. Behind the hedge, I lowered the camera, content with the evidence captured. The plan had unfolded seamlessly, each step a calculated dance in the quiet war Karen had waged against the neighborhood. Now, as she grappled with the vivid consequence of her actions, I felt a quiet kind of vindication. The dye would wash away, but the story would linger. It would ripple through the neighborhood, a cautionary tale in purple. As I turned to leave, the night wrapped around me like a well-worn cloak. The weight of anticipation lifted. I left the tableau behind, fading into the quiet of the night, leaving Karen and her cohort to ponder the cost of their folly. Tomorrow, I thought, with a hint of irony, would bring new colors to the community discussions. The morning sun crept through the blinds, casting slats of light across the living room floor. I sat at my kitchen table, nursing a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. The quiet of the house was a comforting blanket, in stark contrast to the chaos Karen had sown. The memory of her face, painted a vibrant shade of purple, lingered like a satisfying aftertaste. I smiled wryly at the thought. A small victory in a long-standing battle. Her indignant cries had echoed through the neighborhood the previous night, a symphony of outrage and disbelief. The spectacle of Karen and her entourage, splashed in unexpected hues of violet, was a sight that would be cherished in local legend for years. But beyond the indigo triumph, a deeper resolve simmered within me. Her breach of my sanctuary demanded more than just a temporary stain. I scrolled through my email, stopping at the one from my lawyer, short and to the point. It felt like a legal scalpel, ready to excise a persistent tumor. I had always believed that the pen was mightier than the sword, and in this instance, it was ink on paper that would deliver true justice. The Homeowners Association meeting was scheduled for next week, an arena where Karen typically held court. Wielding her position like a blunt instrument, she thrived there, in the politics of petty power, but she had never faced an adversary like me, quiet, methodical. And now, with the law on my side, I had gathered every breach, every overstepped boundary, neatly documented and corroborated. I imagined the moment Karen would receive the cease and desist letter, her face a study in shock, as she realized the game had changed. The HOA was bound by its own rules, and this time, they would have no choice but to enforce them. Her laughter at my dye-stained triumph would turn to silence. I took a deep breath, savoring the quiet strength that comes from knowing the tides are shifting. Karen's reign of terror had been long and unchecked, but like all tyrants, her downfall was inevitable. The irony was delicious. The same HOA she had manipulated for years would now be her undoing. This was more than just a victory over Karen. It was a victory for peace and order, for the idea that bullies, no matter how entrenched, could be toppled. My thoughts wandered to the meeting itself, to the faces of the other residents, weary of Karen's antics, ready for change, but afraid of the cost. The letter would be delivered this afternoon, emailed first. With a hard copy to follow, I imagined her tearing into the envelope, her purple-stained fingers shaking with rage and disbelief. The thought was comforting, a prelude to the real justice that awaited her. I stood, refreshed by the thought of what was to come. The sun climbed higher, its warmth a promise of new beginnings. The neighborhood, still quiet in the morning light, held its breath, poised on the brink of transformation. And as I rinsed my cup, I felt the calm assurance that comes with knowing justice was finally at hand. The air was thick with the stifling scent of chlorine and the distant hum of cicadas as I returned home from the neighborhood meeting. Feeling the weight of a community poised on the brink of implosion, my mind was a cacophony of thoughts, each one a small storm swirling in the back of my skull. The evening had unfolded like a well-rehearsed play, the plot twists predictable yet somehow still shocking in their audacity. Karen had made a grand display of her indignation earlier, her voice a shrill wind cutting through the stuffy air of the community hall. She had decried the purple dye incident as a personal assault, as if the vibrant hue staining her skin were an affront to her very being. Yet, beneath her protests, there was a quiet undercurrent of defeat, a realization that her reign of petty tyranny was drawing to a close. I reached my backyard, where the moonlight glinted off the surface of the now empty hot tub. It seemed almost serene, a stark contrast to the chaos it had birthed. The dye had done its job beautifully, a silent sentinel bearing witness to the transgressions of those who deemed themselves untouchable. It was poetic. Really, the same people who had bullied and browbeaten their way through countless HOA meetings were now marked, their true colors finally showing, even if only temporarily. The dye had been a simple, harmless trick, yet its impact had rippled through the neighborhood like a stone skipped across a pond. In the days since the incident, whispers had spread like wildfire. There was something profoundly satisfying about watching Karen and her cohorts scramble to scrub the evidence from their skin. Their confidence washed away with each futile attempt. They had been left to face the truth of their actions, dyed purple like the bruises they'd left on the community's spirit. I turned my gaze to the night sky, stars glistening like shards of broken glass. The air felt lighter, as if the very atmosphere had been purged of its oppressive tension. My thoughts drifted to the meeting, to the quiet murmurs of support from neighbors who had long been too afraid to speak up. It seemed the dye had done more than just stain skin. It had awakened a sense of unity in the places it touched. Karen had been noticeably absent from the latter half of the meeting, her bravado crumbling under the weight of communal disapproval. The silence she left behind was deafening, a contrasting peace after the storm. There was no need for further confrontation. Her absence spoke louder than any words she could have uttered. With Karen sidelined, the air buzzed with a newfound anticipation, the chance for change, for a community rebuilt on respect and collaboration rather than fear and intimidation. The thought brought a quiet smile to my lips. It was like a garden, once choked with weeds, now ready to bloom anew. I walked back inside, leaving the night to its quiet contemplation. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for now, the victory was enough. The story of the purple-dyed hot tub would become a legend, a cautionary tale whispered in the shadows of HOA meetings for years to come. And Karen, well, she would have to find her place in a world that no longer revolved around her whims. In the end, the dye had revealed more than just the skin beneath. It had exposed the heart of the community, raw and ready for healing, and I, the quiet narrator of this peculiar tale, could finally rest easy knowing that sometimes justice is a vibrant shade of purple.